The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a blood-red hue over the jagged remnants of New York City. The faint smell of decay lingered in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of rust, while distant crumbling echoed through the hollowed streets, breaking the eerie silence. Nature, untamed and relentless, had reclaimed much of what humanity had left behind. Creeping vines choked steel beams, and crumbling skyscrapers leaned into one another like wounded giants waiting to fall. But amidst the decay and eerie silence, something new broke the monotony, a sound that didn't belong. A low, resonating hum rolled across the empty streets, stirring the dust as it grew louder, almost alive. Captain Elena Hayes crouched behind the skeletal remains of a shattered bus, her heart pounding as the source of the sound came into view. The low hum grew louder, vibrating through her chest like a drumbeat, and a bead of sweat traced a slow path down her temple, catching in her visor. The alien vessel shimmered like liquid metal against the crimson sky, descending with a deliberate slowness that made her stomach churn. She tightened her grip on the old plasma rifle she carried, its weight both comforting and a grim reminder of how little humanity's arsenal had accomplished against the Clyran invaders. "Elena," Kieran's voice crackled through her comms, barely above a whisper. "Are you seeing this?" She tapped the side of her visor, activating its HUD. The screen flickered briefly before stabilizing, locking onto the massive ship. The faint hum seemed to press against her ears, an almost tactile vibration. "I'm seeing it," she replied. Her voice was steady, but her pulse betrayed her calm facade. "It's not a patrol ship. Too big. Too slow." Kieran exhaled sharply. "Think it's another resource haul? Or are they finally tired of keeping us around?" Elena's jaw tightened. The Clyrans didn't invade Earth for conquest or resources. They had no interest in stripping the planet of its metals or enslaving its people. Earth, they'd said, was not their prize, it was their prison. Humanity's fierce independence, its knack for turning desperation into innovation, and its unpredictable defiance had made it a threat unlike any other. To the Clyrans, humans were not just dangerous, they were a species that refused to be tamed. Humanity, dangerous and unpredictable, had been locked away on its homeworld like a feral beast too reckless to be trusted among the stars. The Clyrans didn't kill without purpose, but their indifference was no less cruel. Billions had perished in the chaos that followed Earth's isolation, and those who survived lived in the shadow of their wardens, scavenging for scraps while their once great cities rotted around them. "Not sure yet," Elena murmured. "But this ship, it's different. Bigger than anything I've seen since the lockdown." She adjusted her position, creeping closer to get a better view. The vessel's surface rippled like mercury, its hull reflecting the fragmented skyline in distorted waves. It was beautiful in a way that made her skin crawl. "Get back here," Kieran urged. "If this is something new, we need intel, not a hero play." "Relax," Elena said, her tone sharper than she intended. "I'm not planning to get caught." The ship settled above the ruins of what had once been Central Park, hovering silently as if assessing its surroundings. A faint hum emanated from its underside, resonating deep in Elena's chest. She activated her visor's zoom function, scanning for any sign of movement. Her breath caught when a hatch opened, and figures began to emerge, tall, sinewy shapes that moved with an unsettling grace. Their silvery armor gleamed in the dim light, intricate with sharp, angular patterns that seemed to pulse faintly as if alive. Helmets concealed their faces, but the faint glow of their eyes pierced through, giving them an aura of menace. Clyrans. Their silvery armor gleamed in the fading light, each motion deliberate, almost rehearsed. They fanned out across the rubble, their heads turning in unison like predators scenting prey. Elena's fingers tightened around her rifle. She knew better than to engage. The Clyrans were faster, stronger, and armed with technology centuries ahead of anything humanity had left. But as her HUD flickered, analyzing the newcomers, she noticed something odd. These Clyrans were different. Their armor bore unfamiliar markings, and their movements lacked the rigid precision she'd come to expect. They weren't scouts or enforcers. They were searching. "Kieran, you seeing this?" "Barely. Your feed's cutting in and out," he replied. "What's happening?" "I think they're looking for something," Elena said, her mind racing. "Or someone?" A sudden burst of light, blinding and pulsating with rhythmic intensity, forced her to shield her eyes. When she looked again, a smaller craft had detached from the main ship, descending rapidly. It landed with a hiss, its sleek form unfolding to reveal a glowing container. The Clyrans converged on it immediately, their movements frantic. Whatever was inside that container, it was important. Elena's instincts screamed at her to retreat, but her curiosity held her in place. "Elena," Kieran said, his voice low and urgent. "Whatever's happening out there, it's above our pay grade. Get back to the base." "Not yet," she whispered. "I need to see what they're after." Before Kieran could protest, the ground beneath her trembled. A deep, guttural sound reverberated through the air, and the Clyrans froze. Elena watched in stunned silence as the container cracked open, releasing a burst of light that illuminated the ruins. From within emerged a figure, humanoid but unmistakably alien. Its form was tall and imposing, its polished obsidian skin reflecting the pulsating light. Jagged lines of faintly glowing blue ran like veins across its body, giving it an aura of both elegance and power. Its eyes, burning with an inner fire, seemed to radiate a presence that demanded submission. Its skin shimmered like polished obsidian, and its eyes glowed with an inner fire that seemed to pierce through the gathering darkness. The Clyrans knelt immediately, their heads bowed in deference. "Kieran," Elena hissed, her voice barely audible. "You're not going to believe this." "Try me," he replied, his tone strained. They just bowed. All of them. To whatever just came out of that container. Kieran was silent for a moment before muttering, "That doesn't make any sense. The Clyrans don't bow to anyone." "Well, they're doing it now," Elena said, her mind racing. "Whatever that thing is, it's in charge." The alien figure raised a hand, and the Clyrans rose in unison. It spoke, its voice a low, resonant tone that Elena couldn't understand but felt in her bones. The Clyrans responded with clipped, precise movements, dispersing into the ruins with renewed purpose. The figure turned its gaze upward, its glowing eyes scanning the horizon. Elena's breath caught as it paused, its gaze locking onto her position. She flattened herself against the ground, her heart hammering in her chest. "Elena?" Kieran's voice was barely a whisper. "What's happening?" "I think it saw me," she replied, her voice trembling. Before she could finish, the figure raised its hand again. A surge of energy rippled through the air, and the ruins around her seemed to shift, the debris rearranging itself into strange geometric patterns. Elena scrambled backward, her mind racing. This wasn't just a search party. This was something far bigger, and far more dangerous. "Fall back," Kieran shouted through the comms. "Now?" Elena didn't need to be told twice. She turned and ran, her boots pounding against the uneven ground as the hum of energy grew louder behind her. She didn't look back, not even when the light intensified, casting her shadow long and jagged across the ruins. She could hear the Clyrans moving, their footsteps unervingly silent but unmistakable. She reached the edge of the ruins and slid down a steep embankment, landing hard on the gravel below. The sharp scatter of stones echoed in her ears as a jolt of pain shot through her leg, momentarily stealing her breath. Pain shot through her leg, but she pushed herself up, limping toward the hidden entrance to the underground base. The door hissed open just as she reached it, and Kieran's hand shot out, pulling her inside. "What the hell happened out there?" he demanded, his eyes wide with alarm. Elena leaned against the wall, catching her breath. "We've got a problem," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. "The Clyrans brought something here. Something powerful. And it's looking for something, or someone." Kieran's face darkened. "Do you think it's connected to the lockdown?" Elena nodded slowly. "If it is, we're in more trouble than we thought." Above them, the hum of the alien ship intensified, a mechanical yet organic resonance that filled the air with an overwhelming pressure, echoing through the labyrinth of tunnels like a heartbeat from an unseen colossus. Elena exchanged a grim look with Kieran. Whatever was happening, it was only the beginning. The corridors of the underground base hummed with subdued activity as Elena paced the narrow confines of the command center. The air was thick with tension, a palpable unease settling over the group of survivors huddled around the main console. Screens flickered with distorted images of the alien ship above, each glitch a stark reminder of their precarious position. Despite the fortified walls of their sanctuary, the presence of the Clyrans felt closer than ever. "All right, let's go over this one more time," Elena said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Her tone was sharp, commanding, but laced with the weariness of someone who'd carried the weight of survival for far too long. "The Clyrans have brought something new to the table. That," she gestured to a grainy still image of the alien figure, its glowing eyes piercing through the distortion, "isn't just another soldier or officer. Something else. Something above them." Kieran leaned against the console, arms crossed. "And it's looking for something," he added. "The way those Clyrans were scrambling, it's clear this isn't a routine sweep. They're hunting. The question is, what are they hunting?" Vega, the team's tech specialist, interjected. Her hands flew over the console as she attempted to stabilize the feed. Or who? Elena exhaled slowly, her gaze drifting to the map projected onto the wall. It displayed a fragmented outline of the city above, dotted with red markers indicating areas of recent Clyran activity. The epicenter of their operations was unmistakable: Central Park. Whatever it is, they're not leaving without it, Elena said, her voice dropping. And if they find it, I doubt they'll stop there. A heavy silence fell over the room. The implications were clear. If the Clyrans were willing to deploy such a high-level operative, it meant the stakes were higher than they'd ever imagined. We need intel, Elena continued. Vega, can you pull anything else from the feed? Any clue what's in that container? Vega shook her head, frustration evident in her furrowed brow. The signal's too scrambled. Whatever tech they're using, it's way beyond anything we've encountered. I'm barely keeping the feed stable as it is. Kieran stepped forward, his expression grim. Then we go up top. We get eyes on that thing ourselves? Elena turned to him, her eyes narrowing. You're suggesting we send a team directly into the lion's den? I'm suggesting we don't sit here waiting to get blindsided, Kieran countered. If we don't act, we're dead anyway. At least this way we might stand a chance. Elena considered his words, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She hated the idea of risking lives, but he was right. They couldn't afford to stay blind. Not now. All right, she said finally. We'll assemble a recon team. In and out, quick and quiet. Vega, I want you running Overwatch. Kieran, you're with me. The team dispersed, each member falling into their roles with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, Elena and Kieran were suited up and armed, their gear a mismatched collection of salvaged tech and old-world weaponry. Vega's voice crackled in their earpieces as they emerged from the base into the cold night air. Signals holding steady, she said. I'll guide you as close as I can without tipping them off. The city above was a labyrinth of shadows and ruins, every corner a potential hiding spot for danger. Elena moved with precision, her senses heightened as they navigated the debris-strewn streets. The faint glow of the alien ship loomed in the distance, its presence a constant reminder of the stakes. As they neared the edge of Central Park, Vega's voice cut through the silence. Hold up. I'm picking up movement ahead. Elena signaled for Kieran to halt, her eyes scanning the darkness. Moments later, 2 Clyran soldiers emerged from the shadows, their armor glinting faintly in the moonlight. They moved with the same unsettling grace she'd seen earlier, their weapons drawn as they swept the area. What's the play? Kieran whispered. Elena assessed the situation quickly. Engaging would risk alerting the others, but avoiding them entirely wasn't an option. We take them out quietly, she said. Follow my lead. The two moved in sync, their training evident in the fluidity of their movements. Elena approached the first soldier from behind, her blade slipping between the joints of its armor with precision. The Clyran crumpled silently, its weapon clattering to the ground. Kieran dispatched the second with equal efficiency, and within moments the path was clear. Nice work, Vega murmured. You're clear to proceed. They advanced deeper into the park, the once vibrant greenery now a desolate wasteland of twisted branches and scorched earth. The container was still there, its glowing surface casting eerie patterns across the ruins. The alien figure stood nearby, flanked by a small group of Clyrans. Its presence was palpable, an almost tangible force that made the air feel heavier. Elena crouched behind a fallen tree, her eyes locked on the scene. We're close, she whispered. Vega, can you get a read on what they're doing? Working on it, Vega replied. But whatever's in that container, it's emitting a signal I can't decrypt. It's strong. Almost alive. As Vega spoke, the alien figure raised its hand, and the container began to shift. Panels slid open with a hiss, revealing a swirling mass of light and energy. Elena's breath caught as the energy coalesced into a shape, a sphere pulsing with rhythmic intensity. The figure reached out, its hand hovering over the sphere as if communing with it. What the hell is that? Kieran muttered. I don't know, Elena replied. But whatever it is, they're not leaving without it. The figure's glowing eyes shifted, scanning the area as if sensing their presence. Elena's grip tightened on her rifle, her instinct screaming at her to retreat. But she held her ground, waiting for an opening. Elena, you've got incoming, Vega warned. Another squad heading your way. You need to move. Understood, Elena said. We're falling back. As they began to retreat, a deafening roar split the air. The sphere pulsed violently, sending out a shockwave that knocked both Elena and Kieran off their feet. The world spun as she hit the ground, her vision swimming with light and shadow. Through the haze, she saw the alien figure turn toward them, its gaze locking onto her with chilling precision. "Go!" Kieran shouted, pulling her to her feet. Together they sprinted back toward the base, the sound of Clyran pursuit close behind. By the time they reached the entrance, Elena's lungs burned, and her legs felt like lead. The door sealed behind them with a resounding hiss, cutting off the sounds of the outside world. Vega met them in the corridor, her face pale but determined. "What the hell happened out there?" she demanded. Elena shook her head, still catching her breath. "They've got something powerful," she said. "And it knows we're here." The team exchanged grim looks. Whatever the Clyrans were after, it was clear that humanity's fight for survival had just entered a far more dangerous phase. The base was quieter than usual, the hum of its machinery seemingly muted by the weight of the team's return. Elena sat at the edge of the briefing table, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge. Kieran paced the room, his expression dark, while Vega tapped furiously at her console, her face lit by the glow of multiple screens. "We need a plan," Kieran said, breaking the silence. His voice was firm, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed his unease. "Whatever that thing was, it nearly tore us apart, and now it knows we're here." Elena exhaled, her breath shaky. "We've faced impossible odds before. This isn't the end." Kieran stopped pacing and fixed her with a hard look. "This is different, Elena. That creature isn't just a soldier or even a commander. It's something we don't understand. And that's fear. It's alive. You saw how it reacted." "I know what I saw," Elena snapped. She ran a hand through her hair, her frustration barely contained. "But we don't have the luxury of falling apart." "Vega, any progress on decoding that signal?" "Barely," Vega replied, her voice strained. "Whatever tech they're using, it's layered in encryption I can't crack." "But," she hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "But what?" Elena pressed. "The signal isn't just encrypted," Vega said. "It's adapting. Every time I get close it shifts. It's almost like it knows I'm trying to break in." The room fell silent. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "You're saying it's intelligent?" Vega nodded slowly. "More than that. It's reactive. I've never seen anything like it." "So we're dealing with an adaptive system," Kieran said, his tone grim. "And it's in the hands of something that can command the Clyrans like puppets." Elena pushed off the table, standing tall despite the exhaustion etched into her features. "Then we need to take it out. If that sphere is as powerful as it seems, we can't let them use it." "Vega, can you isolate its location from the signal?" "I'll try," Vega said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "But it's going to take time." "Do what you can," Elena said. She turned to Kieran. "In the meantime we need to prepare for the worst. Double the patrols, reinforce the entrances. If they come for us we need to be ready." Kieran nodded, already moving to relay the orders. The team dispersed, each member focused on their tasks, leaving Elena alone in the command center. She stared at the screen displaying the alien ship, its sleek silhouette illuminated against the dark sky. The image seemed to mock her, a constant reminder of the threat looming over them. Hours later, Vega's voice crackled through the comms, pulling Elena from her restless thoughts. "Elena, I've got something." Elena hurried to the console, her heart pounding. "What is it?" "The signal's originating from the sphere," Vega said. "But it's not just a beacon. It's emitting pulses almost like it's communicating with something." "Communicating?" Elena repeated, her mind racing. "With what?" "I'm not sure," Vega admitted. "But the pattern's too complex to be random. It's sending and receiving data in bursts. Whatever it's talking to, it's close." Elena's stomach dropped. "Close as in on the ship? Or close as in here?" "On the planet," Vega said, her voice heavy. "I guess within a few miles." The implications hit Elena like a punch to the gut. If the sphere was communicating with something nearby, it meant the Clyrans weren't just searching for it, they were coordinating. "We need to find whatever it's connected to," Elena said. "If we can disrupt the connection we might have a chance." Vega hesitated. "That's easier said than done. The signal's bouncing all over the place. It's like trying to track a shadow in a hall of mirrors." "Then we break the mirrors," Elena said, her determination hardening. "If we can't isolate the source, we'll force it to reveal itself." Vega frowned. "And how do you plan to do that?" "We hit them where it hurts," Elena said. "We disrupt their operation at the park. If that sphere's as important as it seems, they won't let it fall without a fight." The team assembled in the armory, their faces grim but resolute. Each member suited up, their gear a patchwork of salvage tech and improvised weaponry. Elena moved among them, checking weapons and offering quiet words of encouragement. When she reached Kieran, he gave her a tight smile. "Ready to storm the gates of hell again?" he asked. "Always," Elena replied, her tone light despite the knot in her stomach. "Let's move." They emerged into the night, the cold air biting against their exposed skin. The city loomed around them, its broken silhouette a stark contrast to the faint glow of the alien ship in the distance. They moved quickly, sticking to the shadows as they made their way toward Central Park. When they arrived, the scene was eerily quiet. The container still stood at the center of the clearing, its glowing surface casting strange shadows across the ruins. The alien figure was nowhere to be seen, but a squad of Clyran soldiers patrolled the area, their movements precise and methodical. Elena signaled for the team to spread out, each member taking a position around the perimeter. She locked eyes with Kieran, nodding once before they moved in. The first shots rang out, silent bursts of energy that dropped 2 Clyrans before they could react. Chaos erupted as the rest of the squad scrambled to respond, their weapons lighting up the darkness. Elena darted between cover, her rifle blazing as she targeted the enemy soldiers. The team moved with practiced efficiency, their training evident in every movement. As the last Clyran fell, a deafening roar split the air. The container's surface began to glow brighter, its panels sliding open once more. Elena's breath caught as the sphere emerged, pulsing violently. The alien figure stepped into view, its glowing eyes locking onto her. "We need to take it down," Elena shouted, her voice barely audible over the roar. "Focus on the sphere." The team opened fire, their weapons lighting up the clearing. The alien figure raised its hand, a wave of energy radiating outward and deflecting the shots. Elena gritted her teeth, her mind racing as she searched for a weakness. "Vega," she shouted into her comms. "We need a solution now." "Working on it," Vega replied, her voice tight with urgency. "There's a surge building in the sphere. If it goes critical, we don't let it," Elena said. She turned to Kieran. "Cover me." Without waiting for a response, she broke from cover, sprinting toward the container. The alien figure turned to face her, its hand glowing with energy. Elena dove to the ground as a blast of light seared the air above her, the heat singing her skin. She rolled to her feet, her rifle snapping up as she fired a burst at the figure. The shot struck its armor, staggering it just enough for her to close the distance. With a roar, she slammed her blade into the sphere, the energy surging through her and sending her to her knees. The sphere pulsed violently before shattering, a wave of light consuming the clearing. When the brilliance faded, the alien figure was gone, and the remaining Clyrans lay motionless. Elena staggered to her feet, her body trembling from the effort. Kieran rushed to her side, his expression a mix of relief and concern. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the shattered remains of the sphere. "For now," she said. "But this isn't over. Not by a long shot." They retreated into the night, the faint glow of the alien ship still visible on the horizon. The fight was far from finished, but for the first time in years, Elena felt a spark of hope. The underground base was a hive of subdued activity. Though the sphere had been destroyed, its aftershocks lingered. Elena sat in the command room, staring at a fractured map of Earth displayed on the central monitor. The alien ship still loomed in orbit, a constant reminder that victory was far from assured. Yet for the first time in years there was a glimmer of hope. "Status report," she said, breaking the silence. Vega's fingers danced over the keyboard. "The Clyrans have pulled back from Central Park. Whatever their next move is, they're regrouping." She hesitated, her brow furrowing. "But there's something else. The sphere, it's left residual energy. Pockets of it are scattered around the area, almost like breadcrumbs." "Breadcrumbs for what?" Kieran asked, leaning against the console. His voice carried the weight of exhaustion but also determination. "I don't know," Vega admitted. "But the energy's concentrated near the ruins of the old transit tunnels. It could be a secondary objective, or it might just be fallout from the sphere's destruction." Elena stood, her mind racing. "If there's something left behind, we need to find it before they do. Vega, can you isolate the strongest signal?" "Already on it," Vega said, her fingers flying. Moments later, a blinking dot appeared on the map. "Here." Deep in the tunnels beneath the park, Elena turned to the team. "Suit up. We're not letting the Clyrans get a foothold down there." The team descended into the darkness of the old transit system, their flashlights cutting narrow beams through the stifling gloom. The air was thick and damp, carrying the faint scent of rust and decay. Each step echoed ominously, amplifying the tension that hung over them. "Keep your eyes open," Elena said, her voice low. "If they're here, they'll be waiting for us." The path wound deeper into the earth, the tunnels narrowing and twisting like a labyrinth. Vega's voice crackled in their earpieces. "The energy's getting stronger. You're close." As they rounded a corner, a faint glow illuminated the passage ahead. Elena raised a fist, signaling the team to halt. She crouched low, inching forward until she could see the source of the light. A cluster of crystalline structures jutted from the walls, pulsating with a soft, rhythmic glow. The air around them shimmered faintly as if charged with static. "What is that?" Kieran whispered, his weapon trained on the crystals. "Residual energy," Vega replied through the comms. "It's stabilizing into a physical form. Be careful, we have no idea what it's capable of." Elena signaled the team to spread out, their movements cautious as they approached the crystals. She reached out a hand, stopping just short of touching the nearest one. The energy radiating from it was palpable, a low hum vibrating through her fingertips. "It's not just residual," she murmured. "It's alive." Before anyone could respond, a sudden noise echoed through the tunnel. The team whipped around, weapons raised, as figures emerged from the shadows. Clarence. Their armor glinted in the faint light, and their weapons were already drawn. "Contact!" Elena shouted, diving for cover as the first shots rang out. The tunnel erupted into chaos. Energy blasts lit up the darkness, their crackling hum mingling with the shouts of the team. Elena fired off a series of shots, taking down one of the Clyrans as she repositioned behind a pillar. The air was thick with heat and ozone, the smell acrid and sharp. "We're pinned down?" Kieran shouted over the comms. "They've got reinforcements coming in from the west tunnel?" Elena's mind raced. They were outnumbered, and the narrow confines of the tunnel left little room for maneuvering. But the crystals, they were the key. She glanced at the nearest cluster, their glow intensifying as if responding to the energy in the air. "Vega, can we use the crystals?" she asked, ducking as a blast narrowly missed her head. "Maybe," Vega replied, her voice tense. "But it's a gamble. If they're unstable?" "We don't have a choice," Elena said. "Tell me how to activate them." There was a pause, then Vega's voice came through. "You need to create a feedback loop. Use your rifle's energy cell to overload the crystals. But be ready to run, it's not going to be pretty." Elena nodded, already pulling the energy cell from her rifle. She pressed it against the base of the largest crystal, feeling the hum intensify as the energy began to flow. The crystal's glow brightened, its pulse quickening. "Get clear," she shouted to the team. "Now?" The team scrambled back as the crystal began to vibrate violently. A high-pitched whine filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The Clyrans hesitated, their confusion evident as they turned their attention to the crystals. Then, with a deafening crack, the crystal exploded. A wave of energy tore through the tunnel, sending debris flying and knocking everyone off their feet. The light was blinding, a searing brilliance that consumed everything in its path. When the dust settled, the tunnel was eerily silent. The Clyrans lay motionless, their armor scorched and cracked. The crystals were gone, their energy expended in a final, devastating blast. Elena pushed herself to her feet, coughing as she waved away the dust. Her ears rang and her body ached, but they were alive. She glanced around, relief washing over her as she saw the rest of the team stirring. "Status," she called out, her voice hoarse. "All clear," Kieran replied, helping another team member to their feet. "But we're not sticking around. That blast will have drawn attention." "Agreed," Elena said. "Vega, are you reading any more hostiles?" "Negative," Vega replied. "But you need to move." That energy spike lit up every sensor in the area. Elena nodded, motioning for the team to follow. They moved quickly, retracing their steps through the tunnels and emerging into the cool night air. The city was quiet, the alien ships still visible in the sky, but for now they were safe. Back at the base, the team debriefed in hushed tones. The destruction of the crystals had bought them time, but the fight was far from over. Elena stood by the console, staring at the map as new data trickled in. "We've got a long road ahead," Kieran said, stepping up beside her. "I know," Elena replied, her gaze unwavering. "But we proved something tonight. They're not invincible. And as long as we're still standing, we've got a chance." Kieran nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Then let's make sure we stay standing." For the first time in years, the weight on Elena's shoulders felt just a little lighter. The road ahead was uncertain, but they would face it together. And that, she knew, was humanity's greatest strength.